Let's begin here because too many women confuse invisibility with humility. They move through the world quietly, assuming their presence makes no difference. They downplay their energy question, their worth, and shrink in the name of modesty. But presence doesn't require permission. And beauty, real beauty, is not announced. It's felt. It lingers in the air, long after you've left a room. It doesn't need perfect lighting, flawless skin, or the right words. It's not always loud or obvious, but it is powerful. And the tragedy is, most women don't even realize they carry it. They're already magnetic, but no one ever told them how that energy works. Before I continue, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. And if reflections like this resonate, don't forget to like and subscribe. You see, we live in a world that teaches women to measure their value by what can be seen. The dress size, the makeup, the smile that never falters. But what truly captivates doesn't live on the surface. It lives in the pause before you speak, in the way you hold your gaze, in the steadiness of your breath when others are anxious. It lives in how you carry your history, not perfectly, but truthfully, and that cannot be copied. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But too many never claim that privilege. They trade it for performance. They create a mask, a persona, shaped by approval, not essence. And over time, they forget the quiet radiance beneath it. Yet even through the mask, the soul still leaks out. That's why a woman can feel invisible and still be the reason someone stumbles over his words. She might doubt her reflection and still be the one they remember. She might think she blends in, but her silence stirs the room. It's not magic. It's the unconscious recognizing something real. This video is not about looks. It's about presence, about energy, about the subtle language of attraction that lives in posture, in breath, in stillness. And more importantly, about the journey of recognizing that in yourself. Because the truth is, many women don't lack beauty. They lack awareness of their own impact. And once you begin to see it not with vanity, but with reverence, everything changes. That's where we begin. Not with mirrors, not with compliments, but with the quiet shift that happens when a woman finally sees herself clearly. She doesn't notice the glances. Or maybe she does, but only long enough to dismiss them. It's just politeness, she tells herself, or curiosity, nothing more. Because in her mind, there's always a reason why it couldn't possibly be admiration. Not for her, not like that. This is how it begins, the fracture between how we are seen and how we see ourselves. One side of the mirror reflects a quiet presence that others are drawn to, but the other side, it reflects only what the mind has rehearsed for years. Not enough, not quite right, not yet worthy. And the world offers plenty of confirmation if you're looking through that lens. Beauty is plastered across screens in sharp angles and careful lighting. Confidence is often confused with performance. And so many women learn to measure their worth, by contrast, by how far they fall from someone else's ideal. But attraction doesn't follow those rules. It moves differently. It slips into a room through tone of voice, through calm stillness, through presence that cannot be copied. It appears when a woman isn't trying, when she forgets to perform. And that's the paradox. The less she tries to impress, the more unforgettable she becomes. Still, the mind protests. It recalls old rejections, past silences, years of being overlooked or underestimated. And it builds a narrative I'm not the one people notice, even when strangers smile without reason, even when conversations change the moment she enters a room, even when men seem unsure of how to behave around her. Carl Jung taught that we live divided between the self and the persona, between truth and what we think we must be. And over time, we begin to believe the mask is real. We forget that energy is felt before words are spoken. We forget that others often sense what we still cannot see. So what happens? She walks past someone who turns to look again, and instead of thinking, they felt something, she assumes, maybe I had something on my shirt. She receives a compliment and explains it away. They're just being kind. She underestimates herself, not because she lacks anything, but because she cannot yet accept how deeply she affects others. This inner fracture grows slowly. It feeds on comparison. It thrives in silence. And the more she ignores her own impact, the more she invites others to overlook it too. You might hear this in her voice, the way she brushes off attention with a laugh, or see it in her posture, the slight hunch, the closed-off arms, the instinct to shrink. Not because she wants to disappear, but because she's not sure she deserves the space she naturally fills. And yet, she still leaves a trace. Even in self-doubt, her essence speaks. That's the mystery of the feminine archetype. It does not vanish when unacknowledged. It lingers in the energy field, in the collective unconscious. Others feel it long before she ever does. The shadow begins here, not as darkness, but as unclaimed light. What she refuses to see becomes the very thing that confuses others because they feel drawn in, but she gives nothing to grab onto. She radiates magnetism, then hides from the mirror. She awakens desire, then retreats into silence. And this confusion is contagious. It explains why some men seem fascinated and avoidant at the same time. Why other women offer compliments laced with tension. Why attention shows up not in grand gestures, but in awkward pauses, shy glances, and repeated coincidences. These moments are not random. They are signals from the unconscious trying to bring her back into alignment with the truth. But when the fracture is deep, those signals feel like noise. She can't trust them, not yet. So she assumes the worst, even as the world keeps whispering, "You're more than you know." The journey of individuation always begins here with a break in the illusion. Not a breakdown, but a subtle tension. The outer world keeps reflecting something her inner world won't yet accept. And until she does, her energy will continue to create contrast. She will keep attracting without understanding why. She will remain unforgettable to others, but invisible to herself. And that is the most painful kind of forgetting, not when others overlook you, but when you overlook the radiance you carry every single day. There comes a point when the inner conflict is no longer quiet. Not loud, but undeniable, like a soft hum beneath every interaction. She senses something off but can't quite name it. It's the tension between how she presents herself and who she truly is underneath. The world sees presence. She feels doubt. The world senses magnetism. She worries it's a mistake. And so, a mask is formed, not out of deception, but out of habit. The persona Jung said is the role we play to belong. It is not false, but it is incomplete. She learns to be approachable, but not too direct. Polished, but not vain. Pleasant, but not too much. Every gesture refined by years of silent conditioning: stay agreeable, stay modest, stay small. And over time, that becomes the script. Smile, deflect, downplay, repeat. But the self, the deeper essence, is never fully hidden. It leaks through in the most unexpected moments. In the way she holds silence when others rush to fill it. In the calm steadiness that makes people open up without knowing why. In the nervous stammer of someone who can't seem to look away. These are not accidents. They are echoes of something she has not yet claimed. The persona keeps her safe, but the shadow keeps her honest. And the shadow here is not ugliness or anger. It is unacknowledged beauty. It is strength disguised as softness. It is power, mislabeled as too much. It is the feminine instinct repressed under years of caution. The parts of her that shine the brightest are the very ones she's been taught to dim. She may notice the signs, but misread them. She thinks, why did that woman act cold toward me? Or why did he pull away just when we seemed to connect? But what's really happening is projection. Others sense her light, and it stirs something unresolved in them. Desire, envy, insecurity, awe. And when she doesn't own her radiance, it creates confusion in those around her. They feel pulled in, then unsure. They misinterpret her calm as disinterest. They experience intensity in her silence, but don't know where it comes from. She's not trying to create tension. She's simply not claiming what already exists. This is the paradox of feminine attraction. When unclaimed, it becomes a mystery. When claimed, it becomes clarity. But the transition requires courage, because stepping into that truth often means facing the parts of ourselves we've hidden the longest. Jung wrote that what we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. So long as she denies her inner power, she will experience it through others. She'll wonder why she keeps attracting emotional confusion, why people come close then step back, why admiration feels loaded and friendships feel competitive. But it's not fate. It's the unconscious working overtime to reveal what she still cannot say out loud. You are more than the mask you wear. The persona was meant to help her navigate the world, but now it's become a shield that blocks the very connection she longs for. A shield that says, I'm harmless, I won't stand out. Don't worry about me. But energy doesn't lie. And those around her can sense the contradiction. Her stillness holds depth. Her gaze holds history. Even when she plays small, the room feels her presence. That's why some people smile without knowing why. Why others stumble over their words. Why silence between her and another becomes thick with feeling. She doesn't mean to cause it, but she does. Because essence is stronger than performance. The cost of denying this truth builds over time. It becomes fatigue, self-doubt, a feeling of being misunderstood, of being seen but not quite met. And that is the wound that deepens the space between who she is and who she thinks she must be. And yet this fracture is the beginning of change, because even as the persona resists the self, continues to emerge. Every compliment she dismisses is a message from the unconscious. Every second glance a mirror trying to show her what she still can't accept. And eventually she must ask, what am I so afraid to see in myself? Often, the answer is simple, but difficult. She fears becoming too much, too noticed, too envied, too desired. She fears what might happen if she stops softening her edges, if she simply is what she is, without apology. But what she doesn't yet realize is this: the shadow only overwhelms when it's ignored. Once welcomed, it becomes integration, not more makeup, not more effort, just more alignment. Soft calm return to center. And as she slowly begins to see herself clearly, the mask no longer feels necessary. Not all at once, but piece by piece, it begins to fall away. The laugh that was once performative becomes natural. The smile becomes steady, not strained. The silence becomes a resting place, not a gap to fill. And others notice. But this time, she notices too. This is the turning point, where attraction is no longer something that happens to her, but something she understands from within, where she doesn't need to demand attention because her energy has already spoken, and where the persona no longer controls the room because the self has quietly entered it. There comes a moment when the mask begins to slip, and instead of fear, there is relief. The effort of constant performance gives way to something quieter, something more authentic. She begins to notice that the attraction she inspires does not come from the polished image she has tried to maintain. It arises in stillness, in silence, in the simple act of being. This realization is the beginning of awakening. What once felt like contradiction, others admiring her while she doubted herself, suddenly makes sense. It was never about perfection. It was never about fitting a standard. It was about presence, about energy that cannot be rehearsed. Attraction is not a strategy, but a reflection of essence. Jung often spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole. Here that wholeness takes shape as she sees that the qualities she tried to hide are in fact her truest strengths. The laughter she once stifled carries warmth that lingers. The gaze she thought too direct speaks honesty others crave. Even her silence once feared as emptiness becomes magnetic. The very things she softened are the things that make her unforgettable. This shift is not about arrogance. It is about recognition. Recognition that authenticity itself is captivating. Recognition that the self, when allowed to surface, creates its own quiet gravity. And in this recognition, the shadow is no longer frightening. What she had denied was not darkness at all, but brilliance waiting to be claimed. When a woman begins to see this, she understands why others have always reacted in ways she couldn't explain. The nervous stammer, the second glance, the smile from a stranger, these were never random. They were signs of resonance, energy meeting energy, soul meeting soul. She was not invisible. She was simply unprepared to see herself as others already did. The awakening deepens as she learns the difference between persona and presence. Persona demands effort. It bends, polishes, conceals. Presence requires only honesty. One exhausts, the other restores. The choice becomes clear. No longer spend life perfecting a mask, but instead rest in the natural radiance that was always there. And here lies the paradox. The less she tries to be impressive, the more she embodies it. Because men, women, strangers all respond not to performance, but to authenticity. They may not name it, but they feel it. In the way conversations shift when she walks into a room, in the way silence grows charged when she says nothing at all, in the way her absence is noticed even more than her presence. Jung wrote that what is truly alive in us does not need to be proven. It only needs to be lived. Awakening means trusting that truth. It means understanding that attraction is not manufactured through effort, but flows naturally from alignment. It is the self breaking through the persona. It is the unconscious revealing what the conscious mind has long ignored. Once this recognition takes root, comparisons lose their power. She no longer measures herself against fleeting standards because she now understands that attraction is not a contest. It is a current, and she is already in it. No mirror can capture it fully because it lives in the space between souls. This awakening is both gentle and profound. It is not a sudden flash of revelation, but a steady unfolding. Each day, she notices more how she doesn't need to explain her worth, how others feel it without words, how her quiet confidence reshapes every interaction. The power is not new. What is new is her ability to see it. And with this vision comes responsibility. For when a woman knows her presence is powerful, she must decide how to carry it. Will she dim herself to keep others comfortable, or will she stand with calm certainty, embodying the light that was always hers? This is the heart of individuation, choosing to live from the center of truth rather than the edges of fear. The awakening does not erase self-doubt entirely. The shadow still whispers, still tests her resolve, but now she recognizes it as part of the journey, not as proof of inadequacy. Doubt becomes a signal to return to center, not a reason to hide. And in that return, she discovers strength she once thought belonged only to others. Attraction, then, is no longer confusing. It is no longer dismissed as accident or coincidence. It becomes clear as reflection. What others respond to is the essence she now recognizes in herself. She is no longer invisible, even to her own eyes. She has stepped into the quiet truth that her presence is enough. And that truth is liberation. It frees her from constant striving. It frees her from comparison. It frees her from the endless work of maintaining a mask. She no longer seeks to prove. She simply allows. And in that allowing, she becomes whole. Awakening is only the beginning. Recognition brings clarity, but transformation requires choice. For many women, this is the most difficult step, not seeing the truth, but deciding to live by it. Once she accepts her radiance, she must decide how to carry it. This is where boundaries take shape, not as walls of defense, but as standards of respect. A woman who begins to trust her presence discovers she no longer needs to prove herself. She does not explain away her silence, nor soften every compliment with denial. She learns the difference between humility and self-erasure. Humility bows to truth. Erasure denies it. To recognize her magnetism is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the natural unfolding of what was always within her. Carl Jung described individuation as the process of becoming one's true self. This process always involves choice. We can continue living through the persona, the mask we created to please and protect. Or we can begin to embody the self, which requires honesty and boundary. Boundaries are the outer form of inner integrity. They are the visible lines that say, "This is who I am, and this is how I live." When she sets these boundaries, something shifts in every relationship. She no longer accepts attention that is careless or inconsistent. She no longer responds to crumbs of affection disguised as interest. Her silence becomes selective, no longer a shield, but a standard. If someone retreats out of confusion, she does not chase. If someone offers admiration, laced with envy, she does not shrink. She allows others to reveal themselves, and she responds not with desperation, but with clarity. The choice to embody one's essence often brings discomfort. Some will criticize, claiming she has changed. Others may pull away, no longer able to control the dynamic as they once did. But this is not loss. It is pruning. It is the natural clearing that happens when authenticity rises. The ones who remain are those who can stand in her presence without fear. The ones who fall away were never aligned with her truth to begin with. This is where individuation becomes more than theory. It becomes lived. Each time she chooses to remain steady, instead of apologizing for her light, she integrates another piece of the shadow. Each time, she honors her intuition instead of silencing it. The self grows stronger. Each time she says no to what diminishes her, she says yes to what allows her to flourish. The feminine archetype has long been tied to receptivity, to holding and carrying. But true receptivity is not passive. It is discerning. To receive well, one must choose what to allow in and what to leave outside. This is the heart of boundary, not a rejection of others, but a protection of the soul's center. And here, attraction transforms. It is no longer a mystery she cannot explain, nor a power she fears. It becomes a tool of alignment. Those who approach her now must meet her presence with presence. They must offer respect equal to her worth. The nervous glances, the repeated excuses for contact, the subtle attempts to draw her attention, these may still appear. But now she reads them differently. She sees through performance to intention. She does not allow herself to be pulled into confusion. Her standard is simple clarity or nothing. This decision changes how she moves through the world. She no longer worries about being too much or too little. She no longer hides her silence or her laughter. She no longer explains her choices in order to be understood. She carries herself with quiet certainty, knowing that those who are meant to remain will meet her there. The self has no need for spectacle. It only asks for truth. And truth requires boundary. To honor one's essence means refusing to bend for every demand, refusing to wear a mask for comfort, refusing to live half alive. It means embodying the radiance others have always seen, finally, consciously, without apology. Jung once wrote that the greatest burden of the self is also its greatest gift, the demand to become what one truly is. To choose this path is to accept both light and shadow, both beauty and boundary. It is to live with integrity, not performance. And in doing so, attraction becomes not a fleeting impression, but a lasting presence. This is transformation, not dramatic, not loud, but steady, enduring, unmistakable. A shift that says, I am here whole and unhidden. I do not need to explain my light. I do not need to soften my truth. I am enough as I am, and I will live from that center. When the journey reaches this point, the tension between mask and essence no longer dominates. The shadow has been faced, the persona loosened, and what remains is not perfection, but integration. She has not become someone new. She has returned to what was always there. The difference is that now she sees it clearly. Her presence no longer confuses her. She understands why silence feels magnetic. She understands why others glance twice, why conversations linger, why her absence is felt so strongly. These are not coincidences. They are reflections. The world has always mirrored her light. Now she finally claims it. The deepest transformation is often the quietest, not an explosion of change, but a soft steadying. She no longer explains her worth because it speaks for itself. She no longer chases clarity from others because she has found it within. And in this calm, a profound shift takes place. Attraction is no longer something that happens to her, it is something she inhabits. Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This is what that privilege looks like in daily life. It is not loud. It does not demand approval. It is a woman walking through the world at ease in her own skin, unafraid to take up space, unafraid of silence, unafraid of being noticed or overlooked. She knows that what she radiates cannot be erased because it is not dependent on opinion. It flows from the self. And here lies the lesson for us all. Beauty, attraction, magnetism. These are not tricks or performances. They are the natural language of authenticity. When you live from the center of your being, others feel it. When you embody your own truth, you do not need to announce it. Presence itself becomes the message. The shadow still whispers at times, reminding her of old habits of doubt. But now she meets it with recognition, not fear. She knows that insecurity will surface, but it no longer defines her. It is simply a reminder to return to her center. This is the fruit of individuation, not the absence of struggle, but the ability to meet it with wholeness. And so her story closes where it began, walking through the world without realizing her power. But this time, the ending is different. She does not dismiss the glances. She does not explain away the compliments. She does not shrink when others criticize without reason. She stands in quiet certainty, aware of her impact, but not dependent on it. This is the final integration. She was always attractive, always magnetic, always radiant. The only shift was in her own vision. What she once denied, she now embraces. What she once dimmed, she now allows to shine. And in that acceptance, she becomes whole, not just to the world, but to herself. For each of us, the lesson is universal. We often underestimate the quiet power we carry. We confuse worth with performance. We mistake comparison for truth. But when we learn to see ourselves as we are beyond masks, beyond standards, we step into a different kind of life. One not ruled by striving, but by being. Jung believed that the unconscious is always trying to bring us home, sending signals through dreams, through relationships, through subtle encounters. In this story, those signals were glances, smiles, silences, and nervous gestures. In your life, they may look different, but the message is the same. You are more than you think, and the world already knows it. The task, then, is simple but profound: to accept what has always been true, to stop dimming the light for the comfort of others, to honor the power of presence without apology, to let authenticity become your only standard. When you do, attraction ceases to be a puzzle. It becomes a reflection of your alignment with yourself. And that is the life lesson. This journey leaves us with: your radiance begins not when others see it, but when you accept it. The moment you stop searching outward for proof, you discover what was never missing. Wholeness is not earned, it is remembered. So, as we close, I invite you to reflect. Have you noticed signs like these in your own life moments, when others seemed drawn to you in ways you could not explain, moments when silence carried more meaning than words? Share your thoughts in the comments, not only for yourself, but because your reflection may help someone else recognize their own worth. And if these insights resonate, remember to like and subscribe so you can continue walking with us on this path of reflection. Never forget, this attraction that lasts is never performance, it is presence. And presence is born the moment you choose to live as your whole self. No mask, no apology, only truth.